Hi everybody, Dana Litwin here again, and welcome back to Tuesday Tips for Leaders of Volunteers. Today, talking about pronouns and how we use them today and how the use of pronouns and really language in general has evolved over the years, not just in English, but particularly for how we are addressing each other and colleagues these days. So what's the big deal about pronouns? This is a really common question that I get a lot. I put she, they on my name in Zoom or WebEx meetings and in email signatures, and a lot of my colleagues do. And I think it's important to have a place to learn this information without seeming like you're coming at it from a place of hostility or aggression, and really just get some straight up answers. Why is it important for some folks to include pronouns in their introductions? The simple answer is it's about courtesy and respecting the way people want to be addressed. Someone who is using they, them as a gender neutral term, or like me, she, they, that's an authentic expression of their gender identity and their personality. And it's never for others to decide how someone or a group should be or wants to be addressed. You should hear it from the individual or the group of people that you're talking to if there's a certain ethnic or cultural or demographic identity that they want to express. Ideas about gender change with language and society and culture over time and all the time. It's a constant evolution and kind of progressive system. The American Association of Boys Equal Blue and Girls Equal Pink color scheme is relatively new. It was developed in the 1940s around World War II, and frankly, it was developed as a marketing scheme. In the 20s, if we go back just 100 years, pink was considered a masculine color and blue was considered a feminine color. And the same way that ideas about gender are always evolving in societies, pronouns and language evolves too. Technically in English, if you think back to your grammar lessons in school, pronouns are you, me, us, we, he, she, they, them. That's the basic set. Pronouns exist in almost every language, and again, all languages are evolving. Ask any high schooler doing a Shakespeare play, and so are the use of personal pronouns. So they, them isn't anything new. That's the technical, gender-neutral, singular, and plural pronoun that exists in English and has existed for hundreds and hundreds of years. Technically, contemporary English speakers are misusing the formal you, like usted in Spanish. Second person pronouns should still technically in English be the informal thou or thine, like tu is used in Spanish. But to our modern ears, it just sounds better to say you than thou, unless you're at a medieval times restaurant or the Renaissance fair or a Shakespeare play. Then you start to hear thou and thine and thee more often. But technically, that's the real pronoun that's supposed to be used in English for an informal conversation. If you go back in any language about 500 years, so that takes us back to Shakespeare time, late 1500s, early 1600s. That's about as far back as you can go in any language and any culture that can keep you understanding a conversation with the people in that time. When you go more than 500-ish years back in time in any language, it becomes harder to be mutually intelligible with a modern speaking of that language. So as a Gen Xer in college in the 1990s, I had this pretty similar conversation with my dad, Steve. He was born in 1939. He was always a really smart, curious guy. And he was starting to notice that sometimes I was using they, and other friends of mine that he met or other people of my same generation or younger that he met in my kind of, activist, queer, civil rights circles that I was running with and activities I was doing at the time. So he asked me with genuine curiosity, what's up with they, them? And it's the easy default in English. We don't have to create other words. There was a little bit of a thing in the 90s where we were trying to get je, jem, she, shim to stick, but they, them is just a lot easier, so that's why we're using it 30 years later. I happen to like, for my identity and expression, she, they. I've never been particularly feminine or gender conforming in that way in my appearance most of my life. Pretty classic tomboy, kind of butch of center appearance, but I'm consistently seen and perceived as others as female, and that doesn't bother me. So that's why it's a balance of my gender expression to mix she and they. When people who are cisgendered, heterosexual, they identify that way, they're really certain of their gender expression and they're saying she, her, or he, him, that's a form of not only their expression, but also allyship that starts to help everybody understand how the use of pronouns is changing and evolving in our society these days. And how we use language changes not just on its own as a natural progression, but with society's newly created ideas, inventions, new names of things, expressions, slangs, and all kinds of other factors. If you think about lol speak or internet speak and the use of acronyms like BRB, be right back, and emojis in text messages and in emails, that's a really good example of how, well, there's a way that we communicate today that would not be understandable or make a lot of sense out of context to someone even in the 80s or in the 70s, 40, 50 years ago. So because many people nowadays are using different pronouns than what you might be expecting, it's easy to get confused. I want to acknowledge that. But the simple solution is to ask. If you don't ask, you don't know. And to embrace that person's answer and their pronouns with kindness and respect. Respecting each other is good for society. I think we could all do with a lot more kindness and respect and understanding and compassion and approaching things with curiosity. Our common humanity is expressed really well, I think, with the pronouns we use in English. You, me, us, we, thou, thine, yours, mine. Really trying to bring thou back. That's my Renaissance fair kid coming out, bringing thou and thine back. But for all the triumphs and all the troubles that we have in the world today, we are all in it together. And it's important to remember that if you see an email signature or someone in a meeting, or you're not sure how to address someone, say, what are your pronouns? And they'll tell you, and you'll have the answer, and it's very, very simple. So I hope you've enjoyed these Tuesday tips. This also ties into an article that I've written that'll come out in October for a magazine in Florida for retirees. This channel has a somewhat different audience than that, so I thought I'd share this as well for my Tuesday tips and priceless advice fans and subscribers. If you're not yet subscribed, please do that. Hit the little alert bell button below for absolutely new updates at least every week, sometimes more often. And please like this video. And if you know someone who would really benefit from this information or any of the videos I have on the channel, please share them far and wide. I hope you have a great rest of the week. We'll see you next time for more Tuesday tips. Take care.